Building America's Bat Bomb, a top-secret engineering nightmare. This is a bat. And this is a weapon of mass destruction. During the height of World War II, America came up with a top-secret plan to attack Japan. Not with soldiers, and not with ships, but with an army of 1 million of these creatures, each carrying a tiny napalm bomb. It was called Project X-Ray. And while it was an engineering marvel on paper, in reality, it was a complete nightmare. This is the story of how the United States military tried to turn 1 million bats into the world's first living, guided smart bombs, and the bizarre series of failures that followed. In early 1942, just weeks after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the White House was getting all sorts of letters from citizens wanting to help the war effort. Most were pretty predictable, but one, sent that January, was different. It proposed a weapon so strange, so out there, that it should have been laughed out of the room. The author wasn't a general or a physicist. He was a Pennsylvania dental surgeon and part-time inventor named Lytle S. Adams. Adams was on vacation in New Mexico when he visited the famous Carlsbad Caverns and saw something incredible: millions of bats pouring out of the cave at dusk. That sight sparked an idea. He knew that cities in Japan were built largely from wood and paper, which made them incredibly vulnerable to fire. He also knew that bats are masters of infiltration, able to squeeze into the tiniest, most hidden nooks and crannies. So, what if, he wondered, the bats could carry the fire themselves? In his proposal to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, Adams laid out his wild plan: capture millions of bats, glue miniature bombs to them, pack them into canisters, and drop them over Japanese cities at dawn. As the sun came up, the bats would naturally seek dark places to hide: attics, eaves, and factory rafters. A little while later, a timer would detonate the bombs, starting thousands of fires all at once, from the inside out. It was a vision of overwhelming, surgical chaos. Now, most leaders would have tossed that letter straight in to his advisors with the now famous note: "This man is not a nut." It sounds like a perfectly wild idea but is worth looking into. With that presidential seal of approval, one of the strangest projects of the war, codenamed Project X-Ray, was officially born. The concept was simple enough. The execution, however, was an engineering nightmare. The team behind Project X-Ray faced a whole chain of problems that nobody had ever tried to solve before. First, the weapon itself. The military's smallest incendiary bomb weighed over 2 pounds, way too heavy for a bat. They needed something that weighed just a few grams but could still burn hot enough to start a major fire. So, they brought in Harvard chemist Louis Fieser, the guy who had just invented a tiny masterpiece. Tests confirmed that the chosen species, the Mexican free-tailed bat, which weighs only about 14 grams, could actually carry a payload heavier than its. Have to weaponize the animal. This wasn't just about sticking a bomb on a bat, it was about managing a living arsenal. How do you transport over 1,000 agitated, bomb-strapped bats inside an airplane? The solution was as morbid as it was clever. They put the bats into custom, refrigerated trays to cool them down and force them into hibernation. This made them calm, easy to handle, and ready to pack. But it created a new problem: they had to wake up at exactly the right time. This led to the final and most complex challenge: the delivery system. How do you drop a container of 1,000 hibernating bats from a bomber, make sure they wake up, and get them to disperse over a city without just plummeting to their deaths? The engineers designed something truly remarkable: a 5-foot-long bomb casing. Inside, it wasn't filled with explosives, but with 26 stacked, circular trays, each with little compartments for 1,040 sleeping bats. The plan was to drop this canister from a B-25 bomber. As it fell, a parachute would pop out to slow it down. Then, the outer shell would fall away, and the internal trays would separate like an accordion, letting the now awakening bats fly free to begin their mission. In theory, it was a perfectly synchronized aerial deployment of living bombs. Of course, a great theory doesn't always survive its first encounter with reality, especially when that reality involves thousands of unpredictable animals. The testing phase of Project X-Ray was a comedy of errors, if it wasn't so dangerous. Early drops were a mix of dark humor and genuine disaster. Sometimes the bats, still chilled into hibernation, didn't wake up in time and just rained down from the sky like furry little rocks. Its most infamous moment, its big claim to fame, came on May 15, 1943, at an auxiliary airbase near Carlsbad, New Mexico. After a test drop, a few bats armed with live incendiaries were accidentally released on the ground. Woken by the hot desert sun, the bats did exactly what they were designed to do. They found dark, sheltered places to roost. They found perfect spots under a fuel tank, inside a new barracks, and in the hangar. A few minutes later, the timers went off. The control tower burst into flames. The barracks erupted into an inferno. Soon, the entire base was on fire. Reportedly noted that those 6 escaped bats had pretty much proven the weapon would work. Despite this fiery setback, the project was handed over to the Navy and then the Marine Corps. Later tests at the WWII Proving Ground in Utah were more controlled. They built a mock Japanese village, and this time, the bat bombs worked perfectly, starting dozens of fires and burning the village to the ground. A military report concluded that, pound for pound, the bat bomb was way more effective than traditional bombs. One load of bat bombs could start over 4,700 fires, compared to just 400 from a standard payload. The weapon was brutally effective. The bat bomb was proving to be a powerful weapon, but it had a problem: time. The project was falling behind schedule, and by late 1944, it was clear it wouldn't be ready for combat by its mid-1945 target. Meanwhile, another top-secret project was moving much faster. In the labs at Los Alamos, scientists were perfecting a weapon of unimaginable power, one that was far more decisive than a million tiny fire starters. So, after spending $2 million, which is about $35 million in today's money, Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King canceled Project X-Ray. The atomic bomb had made the bat bomb obsolete before it ever saw combat. The project was shelved, becoming a wild footnote in the history of experimental weapons. Lytle Adams, the dentist who started it all, always argued his idea would have been devastatingly effective and could have ended the war with fewer casualties than the atomic bombs. But the legacy of the bat bomb isn't just a what-if. It's a story that proves that in the crucible of total war, no idea is too strange, too wild, or too much of an engineering nightmare to try. It shows that the line between genius and madness can be incredibly thin, and sometimes, it flies on the wings of a bat. The bat bomb was one of the wildest weapon ideas of World War II, but it was far from the only one. To see what the other side was developing, check out our video on the flawed engineering of the Nazi war machine right here. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the craziest projects in history. Project X-Ray was a weapon that was simultaneously brilliant in its concept and completely absurd in its execution. It pushed the very limits of engineering and biology, all for the sake of victory. And while it never saw battle, the story of the bat bomb is a powerful reminder that in the history of war, the truth is often far stranger than fiction. But Roosevelt was intrigued. He passed the letter